The lights dimmed in the great hall as thousands of alien beings fell silent. Ambassador Trill felt his 4 hearts beating faster than normal. The speech he was about to give could save countless lives across the galaxy. Or it could doom them. All if these delegates ignored his warning. The holographic display behind him showed images from Earth. Human cities with their strange architecture. Human families walking together in parks. Human children playing games that seemed innocent, but revealed something disturbing about their species. The data his research team had gathered over 3 years painted a picture that terrified him. Fellow members of the Galactic Council, Trill began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through translation devices. Today we discuss the newest member of our community, the species that calls itself human. A few representatives shifted in their seats. Everyone knew about humans. They had arrived on the galactic scene like a storm, winning wars that should have been impossible to win. Their military tactics were brutal and effective, their technology advanced at frightening speeds. But they had followed all the proper procedures for joining the Council. They seemed civilized enough. Our scientists have studied human behavior for 36 standard months, Trill continued. We have observed their colonies, monitored their communications, and analyzed their cultural patterns. What we found defies everything we know about intelligent life. The massive screen changed to show footage of human parents with their offspring. Unlike most species, human young remained helpless for many years. They required constant care and protection. This should have made humans weak and cautious. Instead, it had created something unprecedented. All civilized species prioritize the survival of the group, Trill explained. When faced with danger, rational beings make logical choices. They sacrifice individuals to save the majority. They negotiate. They retreat when the odds are against them. Humans do not follow these basic rules. Commander Voss of the Hegemony raised one of his clawed hands. His insect-like features showed obvious boredom. Ambassador Trill, surely you are not suggesting that humans are somehow different from every other species we have encountered. They have children, just like the rest of us. They are simply another addition to our great community. Trill's skin shifted to a dark purple color that indicated extreme concern. Commander Voss, that is exactly what I am suggesting. Human behavior regarding their offspring represents a fundamental deviation from normal evolutionary patterns. Let me show you what our observers recorded during the Kepler-7 incident. The screen filled with security footage from a human research station. Pirates had attacked the facility, looking for valuable equipment and supplies. Standard procedure for any species would be to surrender when resistance became hopeless. The pirates had superior numbers and better weapons. Logic demanded submission to save lives. The human researchers did not surrender. When the pirates reached the section where human children were housed, something extraordinary happened. Adult humans who had been cooperative prisoners suddenly became something else entirely. They fought with improvised weapons. They used their own bodies as shields. They showed no concern for their own survival. Watch carefully, Trill said as the footage continued. The human female designated as Dr. Amy blocks the corridor with her body. She knows she will die. She accepts this completely. Her only goal is to delay the attackers for 17 more seconds. That is how long her colleague needs to activate the emergency lockdown. The assembled delegates watched in fascination and horror as the human doctor was killed, but not before achieving her objective. The children were sealed behind blast doors that the pirates could not breach. The remaining adults continued fighting until rescue ships arrived 3 hours later. This behavior pattern repeats across every human settlement we have observed, Trill said. When human offspring are threatened, adult humans cease to function as rational beings. They become what their own language describes as monsters. They fight beyond any reasonable hope of victory. They accept impossible odds. They choose death over retreat. The hegemony commander's mandibles clicked in dismissive laughter. Emotional responses, nothing more. Any species shows protective instincts toward their young. Humans cannot be significantly different in this regard. Trill activated another display. This one showed casualty reports from various conflicts involving humans. The numbers were staggering. In every situation where human children were present, enemy forces suffered losses that far exceeded any predictable outcome. During the Battle of Ross 128, human defenders were outnumbered 15-1, Trill reported. They had inferior weapons and no orbital support. Military analysts from 6 different species calculated their chances of victory at less than 1%. The attacking force included Korthak raiders, widely considered among the finest warriors in the galaxy. The screen showed the aftermath of that battle. Burned ships, destroyed equipment, bodies of elite Korthak warriors scattered across the battlefield. The human settlement had 800 adults and 200 children, Trill continued. When the Korthak forces attempted to take hostages to force surrender, they discovered something our military theorists had never encountered. Humans fight differently when their children are at risk. They do not calculate odds. They do not preserve resources for retreat. They commit everything to total destruction of any threat to their offspring. Several delegates were now paying closer attention. The Korthak were not easily defeated. They had conquered dozens of worlds. For humans to destroy an entire Korthak raiding fleet with such disadvantages suggested capabilities that had not been properly assessed. This leads us to the formal recommendation of the Scientific Council, Trill announced. Effective immediately, all member species must observe strict protocols regarding human offspring. Any contact with human children requires prior authorization from this council. Any actions that could be interpreted as threatening to human young must be avoided completely. Commander Voss stood again, his posture showing clear irritation. Ambassador Trill, you are asking us to treat humans as if they were some kind of dangerous predator species. They are fellow members of this council. Surely such extreme measures are unnecessary. Trill's skin shifted to an even darker shade of warning. Commander Voss, I have reviewed your species' recent expansion activities. Several of your operations have moved closer to human territories. I urge you to reconsider any plans that might bring hegemony forces into contact with human civilians. The hegemony does not alter its strategic objectives based on the emotional reactions of primitive species, Voss replied coldly. The formal vote was held 30 minutes later. Galactic Directive 2847 Alpha passed with strong support. Most species recognize the wisdom of avoiding unnecessary conflicts with humans. The directive established clear boundaries and procedures for any interactions involving human children. Commander Voss and 12 other hegemony representatives voted against the measure. As they left the chamber, Trill noticed they were already communicating with someone through encrypted channels. Their body language suggested they were making plans. Ambassador Trill filed his final report that evening with growing unease. The warning had been given. The proper procedures had been followed. But he suspected that some species would choose to test the boundaries anyway. History would prove him tragically correct. 3 days later, Hegemony High Command issued secret orders to several of their deep space fleets. The humans had something valuable that the hegemony wanted. Their warning about human protective instincts was about to be tested in the most direct way possible. The galaxy was about to learn why some warnings should always be heeded. Deep in the hegemony home system, High Admiral Crix studied the holographic display with satisfaction. The intelligence reports painted a perfect picture of opportunity. A human colony transport called the New Dawn was carrying 40,000 settlers to establish a new world. Among them were 8,000 children. The black market value of human specimens had skyrocketed since first contact. Their rapid learning abilities and problem-solving skills made them incredibly valuable for various purposes across the criminal underground. Other species young were useful, but human children represented the ultimate prize. They adapted to almost any environment and could be trained for complex tasks that adult slaves could not master. The timing is perfect, Admiral Crix explained to his fleet commanders through secure channels. The transport is traveling alone through the void sector. No escort vessels. No nearby military patrols. The humans think they are safe in neutral space. Commander Raz of the assault vessel Iron Mandible studied the tactical data on his personal screen. The New Dawn was a massive civilian transport, designed for comfort and efficiency rather than defense. Its shields could protect against asteroid impacts and cosmic radiation, but would collapse quickly under military-grade weapons. "Sir," Raz asked, "what about the Galactic Council directive regarding human offspring? Our own representatives voted against it, but technically it is still binding law." Admiral Crix's compound eyes glittered with amusement. "Commander, the Galactic Council creates many laws that prove impractical in real situations. No one will start a war over a few missing specimens from a transport that suffered an unfortunate accident in deep space." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Iron Mandible would intercept the New Dawn far from any inhabited systems. They would disable the ship's engines and communications, then extract the valuable human children before destroying the evidence. The adult humans would be eliminated to prevent witnesses. Within days, the children would be distributed to buyers across the galaxy through untraceable channels. "Remember," Admiral Crix emphasized, "we need the children alive and unharmed. Damaged specimens have no value. Use neural disruptors on the adults, but keep the young ones conscious. Buyers prefer them alert and responsive." 3 days later, the Iron Mandible dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in the path of the New Dawn. The human transport was exactly where intelligence had predicted, moving slowly through empty space toward their destination. They had no reason to expect trouble in this quiet sector. Commander Raz watched with professional appreciation as his crew executed the intercept perfectly. Advanced stealth systems had kept them invisible until the last moment. The New Dawn's crew barely had time to realize they were under attack before the Iron Mandible's weapons disabled their engines and communication array. "Target is secured," reported his tactical officer. No distress signal was transmitted. All primary systems are offline. Raz activated his boarding crews. 40 elite hegemony warriors equipped with the finest weapons and armor money could buy. They had conducted similar operations on dozens of worlds. This should be routine. The first indication that something was wrong came when the boarding pods reached the New Dawn's docking bays. The human ship's internal sensors should have shown panicked civilians running in all directions. Instead, the readings indicated organized movement toward defensive positions. "Sir," reported Squad Leader Vesh from the main passenger section, "the humans are not behaving normally. They have constructed barriers from furniture and equipment. They appear to be preparing for extended resistance." Commander Raz reviewed the tactical displays with growing confusion. Every other species they had raided had shown predictable behavior patterns. Civilians would hide or flee when faced with overwhelming military force. Some might attempt minor resistance, but they would surrender quickly when the situation became hopeless. The humans were doing something completely different. Adult males and females had organized into coordinated defensive lines. They had somehow manufactured weapons from ship components. More disturbing, they had positioned themselves between the boarding forces and the areas where their children were housed. "Proceed with standard extraction protocol," Raz ordered. "Use neural disruptors to incapacitate adult resistance. We only need the children conscious for transport." What followed shattered every assumption the hegemony had made about human behavior. The adult humans did not retreat when faced with superior firepower. They did not negotiate for better treatment. They fought with a savage determination that shocked the veteran boarding teams. A human male, designated as Dr. Paul, used his medical training to treat wounded defenders while simultaneously coordinating attacks against the boarding parties. When neural disruptors failed to stop him, he continued fighting until multiple direct weapon hits finally brought him down. A female engineer named Lisa had somehow rewired sections of the ship's power grid to create improvised electrical traps. 3 hegemony warriors were electrocuted before the boarding teams realized what was happening. Lisa continued her sabotage efforts even after suffering severe burns from her own devices. "Sir," Squad Leader Vesh reported with obvious strain in his voice, "we are taking heavy casualties. The humans are using tactics we have never encountered. They show no regard for personal survival." Commander Raz watched the security feeds in fascination and growing horror. A human couple had turned their own quarters into a fortress, using furniture and personal belongings to create defensive positions. They held off an entire squad of professional soldiers for over an hour, buying time for other humans to evacuate, children to more secure areas of the ship. The male human finally fell when the ceiling collapsed from weapon fire, crushing his legs and leaving him unable to move. Instead of surrendering, he activated some kind of improvised explosive device. The blast killed 2 more hegemony warriors and sealed off the corridor, forcing the boarding teams to find alternate routes. "These beings are insane," muttered Lieutenant Kess as he reviewed casualty reports. "They fight like cornered predators, but they are supposed to be civilized." The battle continued for 6 more hours. Every section of the ship became a war zone. Human adults used their knowledge of the ship's systems to create dozens of tactical advantages. They turned maintenance shafts into ambush points. They used the artificial gravity generators as weapons. They fought with improvised explosives, emergency tools, and bare hands when necessary. By the time the Iron Mandible's forces finally secured the areas containing human children, they had lost 38 warriors out of their original complement of 40. The surviving humans had been eliminated, but the cost had been staggering. "Mission accomplished," Commander Raz reported to Admiral Crix, though his voice lacked any sense of victory. "We have secured 200 human specimens. All are alive and in acceptable condition." "Excellent," Admiral Crix responded. "Proceed to Black Market Station Omega 7. Our buyers are waiting." What neither of them knew was that 3 human children had managed to activate a hidden emergency beacon during the chaos of battle. The signal was weak and would take time to reach any receiver, but it carried a simple message: coordinates, ship registry, and a child's voice saying, "They took us. Mama and Papa fought, but they took us." The beacon's transmission would change everything. The hegemony had just committed the one act that would unite every human in the galaxy behind a single purpose. They had taken human children after killing their parents. The galaxy was about to learn why the Galactic Council's warning had been so urgent. As the Iron Mandible jumped to faster-than-light speed with its cargo of traumatized human children, the emergency beacon continued its automatic transmission into the void. Somewhere in human space, receivers were beginning to pick up the signal. The hunt was over. Now came the reckoning. The emergency alert reached Earth's Colonial Defense Network at 0347 hours Galactic Standard Time. Lieutenant Grace Murphy was monitoring deep space communications when the signal appeared on her screens. At first, she thought it might be another routine maintenance update from one of the outer colonies. Then she heard the voice. "They took us. Mama and Papa fought, but they took us." The words were spoken by a child, probably no more than 6 years old. The transmission was weak and broken, but the coordinates were clear. The signal was coming from the last known position of the colony transport New Dawn. Grace's hands shook as she ran the standard verification protocols. The voice print matched the passenger manifest. The child was named Emma Thompson, traveling with her parents to establish a new life on Haven Prime. The emergency beacon was genuine. Within minutes, the alert had reached the highest levels of human military command. Admiral Beth Cross stood in the emergency command center, reading intelligence reports that made her blood run cold. The New Dawn had been found drifting in space, its engines disabled and hull breached in multiple locations. There were no survivors among the adult passengers. "Status report," Admiral Cross ordered, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. Intelligence Officer Tom Hayes consulted his datapad with grim efficiency. The new dawn carried 40,000 civilians, including 8,000 children. Rescue teams have recovered 37,000 adult bodies. All show signs of violent death. No children have been found aboard the ship. The silence in the command center was absolute. Every officer present understood the implications immediately. Someone had attacked a defenseless civilian transport, murdered thousands of innocent people, and taken their children. Do we know who was responsible? Admiral Cross asked. Analysis of weapon signatures and boarding pod residue indicates hegemony forces, Hayes reported. The same species that voted against the Galactic Council's protection directive 6 months ago. Admiral, Cross felt something cold and final settle in her chest. She had served in humanity's bloodiest conflicts, from the Mars Rebellion to the Proxima War. She had seen combat that would break lesser beings. But this was different. This was about children. Current deployment status of our deep space fleets? She asked. The Fifth Fleet is conducting training exercises near the hegemony border, reported Fleet Coordinator Davis. They can be redirected within 12 hours. The Third and Seventh Fleets are currently on patrol assignments, but can be recalled and repositioned within 72 hours. Recall all fleets immediately, Admiral Cross ordered, and send a priority message to the Galactic Council. Inform them that humanity formally invokes Article 12 of the Galactic Citizenship Accords. Article 12 was rarely used. It allowed any member species to temporarily withdraw from Council oversight when responding to acts of genocide or crimes against their young. Essentially, it gave humanity permission to act outside galactic law until their children were recovered safely. The message reached the Galactic Council within 6 hours. Ambassador Trill read the formal declaration with growing alarm. He had warned his fellow delegates about human protective instincts. Now, his worst fears were being realized. The humans are claiming that hegemony forces have committed genocide against their civilians and kidnapped their offspring, Trill reported to the emergency session. They are invoking their right to respond without council restrictions. Commander Voss, one of the few surviving hegemony representatives on the council, objected immediately. These are serious accusations without proper evidence. The hegemony does not engage in attacks against civilian vessels. The evidence is being transmitted now, Ambassador Trill replied. Human investigators have analyzed the attack site and identified specific hegemony weapon signatures. They have also intercepted communications indicating that the missing children are being transported to black market stations. The chamber filled with nervous whispers from dozens of species. Everyone remembered the footage of human combat effectiveness during their wars of expansion, but those had been military conflicts with clear objectives and rules of engagement. This was something entirely different. Meanwhile, human deep space reconnaissance networks were working at maximum capacity. Every monitoring station in human space had been tasked with locating the missing children. Advanced scanning technology that normally tracked enemy fleet movements was now focused on finding a single hegemony vessel. The breakthrough came 18 hours after the initial alert. A human listening post in the rim sector detected the Iron Mandible's faster-than-light signature heading toward known criminal territories. The ship was broadcasting coded advertisements for rare specimens to potential buyers across the galactic. Underground, Admiral Cross reviewed the intelligence reports with cold precision. The Iron Mandible was carrying 200 human children toward Black Market Station Omega-7, a notorious hub for illegal activities beyond the reach of most government forces. The station was protected by defensive platforms and a small fleet of mercenary vessels. "Ma'am," reported Tom Hayes, "we have confirmed the location of our missing children. They are alive but being held aboard a hegemony vessel approaching a criminal stronghold." "Fleet status?" Admiral Cross asked. "All 3 fleets are now in position. The Fifth Fleet has established a perimeter around the target area. The Third and Seventh Fleets are standing by for assault operations." Admiral Cross activated the secure command channel that connected her to every human military unit in the galaxy. Her words would be recorded and remembered by historians for centuries to come. "Ladies and gentlemen, 200 human children are being held by hostile aliens who murdered their parents. These children are being transported to criminal buyers who view them as valuable property. I don't care about galactic law, diplomatic consequences, or collateral damage. We are bringing our kids home. The response from human fleet commanders was immediate and unanimous. Every ship, every crew, every individual soldier volunteered for the rescue mission. More than that, they volunteered for something else entirely. "Admiral," reported Captain Stone of the battleship Vengeance, "request permission to deploy ghost ship protocols." Admiral Cross hesitated for exactly 3 seconds. Ghost ship protocols were reserved for the most extreme circumstances. They authorized the use of weapons and tactics that violated every galactic treaty humanity had signed. They removed all restrictions on collateral damage. They essentially gave fleet commanders permission to wage war without limits. "Permission granted," Admiral Cross replied. "All fleets are authorized to use ghost ship protocols. Bring our children home and make sure no one ever thinks about taking them again." Across human space, the most powerful military force in the galaxy began moving with a single purpose. They were no longer thinking about rules of engagement or diplomatic consequences. They were thinking about 200 terrified children who had watched their parents die trying to protect them. The hegemony had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that humans would respond like any other civilized species. They expected negotiations, legal proceedings, and eventual compromise solutions. They were about to learn that humans had a very different approach to protecting their young. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. The full fury of an entire species focused on a single objective. The rescue of 200 children was about to trigger the most one-sided military action in galactic history. Admiral Cross reviewed the tactical displays one final time. 3 complete fleets, over 600 ships, tens of thousands of the finest soldiers humanity had ever produced, all focused on one goal. "Begin the operation," she ordered. "Show them why the Galactic Council warned them not to touch our children." Black Market Station Omega-7 floated in the depths of space, like a metallic cancer, fed by the worst crimes the galaxy had to offer. Station Administrator Krell reviewed the evening's auction schedule with satisfaction. The hegemony vessel Iron Mandible had arrived with the most valuable cargo ever brought to his facility, 200 human children. Word of the rare specimens had spread quickly through the criminal underground. Buyers were arriving from across the galaxy, bringing enough credits to make everyone involved extremely wealthy. The children would be distributed to various purposes, from research subjects to trainable assets for criminal organizations. "The bidding will be intense," Krell told his security chief. "Make sure our defensive systems are at maximum readiness. Some of these buyers have been known to attempt theft rather than payment." What Krell did not know was that human deep space reconnaissance had been tracking every ship that approached his station for the past 18 hours. Advanced stealth technology allowed human observers to monitor all communications, map all defensive positions, and identify every potential threat to the rescue operation. Commander Raz stood on the bridge of the Iron Mandible, reviewing the auction preparations with mixed emotions. The operation had been successful in achieving its primary objectives, but the cost in hegemony lives had been staggering. The humans had fought with a ferocity that defied all military analysis. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we are receiving multiple approach vectors from potential buyers. The auction should proceed as scheduled." "Maintain security protocols," Raz ordered. "These children represent the most valuable cargo we have ever transported. Nothing must go wrong at this stage. At the edge of the system, invisible to all conventional sensors, the human Fifth Fleet held position in perfect silence. Admiral Cross had deployed her forces in a formation that would allow rapid response to any contingency. The 3rd and 7th Fleets were approaching from different vectors, creating a perfect encirclement that would prevent any escape. "Ghost, Ship Omega is in position," reported Captain Stone from the Vengeance. "All systems are showing green. We are ready to begin the operation." Admiral Cross reviewed the tactical display one final time. Every ship in the criminal station was cataloged and targeted. Every defensive platform had been analyzed for weaknesses. Every potential hiding place for the children had been identified and prioritized for rapid search. All units, this is Admiral Cross, she broadcast on the secure command frequency. Operation begins in 60 seconds. Remember, our primary objective is the safe recovery of 200 human children. Everything else is secondary. The first indication that something was wrong came when Black Market Station Omega-7's long-range sensors detected massive faster-than-light signatures approaching from multiple directions. Station Administrator. Krell watched the display with growing alarm as more contacts appeared every second. "How many ships are approaching?" he asked his sensor operator. "Sir, I count over 600 vessels. Configuration and energy signatures indicate military-grade technology far advanced from anything in our defensive arsenal." Krell felt his blood turn cold. 600 military vessels represented a force capable of conquering entire star systems. No one deployed that kind of firepower for simple raids or territorial disputes. This was the kind of force used for total annihilation. "Open communications with the approaching fleet," Krell ordered. "Find out what they want." The response came immediately, broadcast on all frequencies with enough power to reach every ship and station in the system. The voice belonged to Admiral Cross, and it carried the cold authority of absolute certainty. "This is Admiral Cross of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have taken our children. You killed their parents. You have exactly one opportunity to return them unharmed to designated coordinates that are now being transmitted to your system." Commander Raz received the transmission aboard the Iron Mandible with growing terror. The sensor displays showed human vessels emerging from faster-than-light travel in perfect formations. These were not the standard military ships he had expected. These were something else entirely. The human fleet included vessels that seemed to violate several laws of physics, ships that moved without visible propulsion systems, weapons platforms that generated energy signatures beyond theoretical maximums. Most disturbing of all, several vessels appeared to be crewed entirely by volunteers who had lost family members to various conflicts throughout human space. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic, "the human fleet is not following standard military formations. They appear to be deploying some kind of siege configuration designed for total system control." Raz activated his communications array, hoping to negotiate some kind of reasonable solution. "Human Admiral, we are prepared to discuss terms for the safe return of the specimens. Perhaps we can reach a mutually beneficial arrangement that satisfies all parties involved." The response was immediate and final. A section of Black Market Station Omega-7's eastern docking bay simply ceased to exist, vaporized by weapons that should not exist outside theoretical physics laboratories. The destruction was surgically precise, eliminating exactly the amount of material necessary to demonstrate overwhelming capability without harming anyone nearby. "Let me be more clear," Admiral Cross continued, her voice carrying the same conversational tone she might use to discuss weather conditions. "You have 30 minutes to deliver our children to the coordinates I have provided. For every child that is harmed, injured, or shows signs of distress beyond normal parameters, we will extend this demonstration to include one of your home worlds." The transmission ended with a countdown timer and specific coordinates where the children were to be delivered. Commander Raz realized with perfect clarity that the Galactic Council's warning had not been a diplomatic courtesy. It had been a species survival guide. Station Administrator Krell watched in fascination and horror as his supposedly impregnable defenses were systematically dismantled by weapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics with every shot. The human fleet was not just attacking, they were conducting a surgical demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. "Sir," his security chief reported, "our defensive platforms are being destroyed faster than we can activate them. The human weapons appear to be targeting our systems with impossible accuracy. They know exactly where everything is located." What the criminals did not understand was that humanity's response was not just military. It was the coordinated effort of an entire species focused on a single objective. Every human in the galaxy had contributed something to this rescue operation. Intelligence networks, technological resources, strategic planning, and pure determination had been combined into the most effective military action in recorded history. The rescue itself took exactly 28 minutes. Human boarding teams, equipped with the most advanced technology available, materialized directly inside the sections where the children were being held. The rescue teams included medical specialists, psychological counselors, and military personnel trained specifically for hostage recovery operations. The 200 human children were found alive but traumatized by witnessing their parents' deaths. They were immediately transferred to specially prepared medical vessels equipped with everything necessary for their physical and emotional recovery. Each child was treated with the kind of care normally reserved for heads of state. Commander Raz and the surviving members of his crew were taken into human custody. They would be transported to Earth for trial under human law, since the hegemony had effectively placed themselves outside galactic legal protection by their actions. Admiral Cross, transmitted Station Administrator Krell in a desperate attempt. To avoid total destruction, the children have been returned safely. Surely this demonstrates our willingness to cooperate with human demands. The children are secure, Admiral Cross confirmed. Now we address the secondary objectives of this operation. What happened next became the most documented military action in galactic history. The human fleets did not withdraw after rescuing their children. Instead, they began systematically destroying every facility, ship, and installation that had any connection to the child trafficking network. The criminals had assumed that humans would be satisfied with recovering their offspring. They expected negotiations, legal proceedings, and eventual return to business as usual. They were completely unprepared for humanity's actual response. Over the following weeks, every hegemony facility, outpost, and vessel that had participated in or supported the kidnapping operation was located and destroyed. Human intelligence networks, operating with resources that had never been revealed to the galactic community, exposed a trafficking network that extended across dozens of star systems. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated capabilities that had been completely hidden during their previous military actions. This was not the restrained, civilized species that had joined the Galactic Council. This was something ancient and terrible that had been awakened by the simple act of threatening their young. The rescue of 200 children had become the catalyst for the most comprehensive military campaign in galactic history, and humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Council chambers had never seen anything like the emergency session that convened 36 hours after the human rescue operation. Representatives from over 200 species filled the Great Hall, all demanding answers to the same question. How had humanity hidden such overwhelming military capabilities? Ambassador Trill stood at the central podium, reviewing reports that defied everything the galactic community thought they knew about their newest members. In less than 2 standard days, human forces had systematically dismantled a criminal network that had operated across dozens of star systems for over a century. The scope of human retaliation has exceeded all projections, Trill reported to the assembled delegates. They have not limited their actions to recovering their offspring. They have declared war on the entire concept of child trafficking throughout this galaxy. The holographic displays showed the devastating efficiency of humanity's campaign. Black. Market Station Omega-7 had been completely destroyed, along with 17 similar facilities. Over 400 criminal vessels had been eliminated. Dozens of trafficking operations that had nothing to do with humans had been exposed and shut down. This represents a fundamental violation of galactic law, protested the surviving hegemony representative. His species had lost 60% of their deep space fleet in the past week. Humans have attacked neutral territories, destroyed legitimate businesses, and acted without any legal authorization. Ambassador Trill's skin shifted to the deep purple color that indicated extreme stress. Representative Koss, Your species was specifically warned about the consequences of targeting human offspring. The Council's position is that humanity acted with appropriate restraint under the circumstances. Restraint? Koss's voice rose to a shriek that carried across the vast chamber. They destroyed 14 star systems worth of infrastructure. They eliminated our entire outer defense network. They have committed genocide against our military forces. The human representative, Ambassador Dr. Ann Foster, stood calmly at her delegation's position. She was a small woman with gray hair and gentle features. But every being in the chamber had seen the reports of what her species was capable of when sufficiently motivated. The hegemony murdered 40,000 innocent civilians and kidnapped 200 children, Dr. Foster stated, in a voice that carried clearly without amplification. They did this after being specifically warned about the consequences. We could have chosen a different approach. We didn't. The unspoken implication hung in the chamber air like a toxic cloud. Everyone present understood that humanity had demonstrated surgical precision in their revenge, but they also possessed the capability for much broader destruction. The question that terrified every delegate was simple. What would humanity do if an entire species threatened their children? The human response has revealed capabilities that were not disclosed during their application for council membership, observed Representative Zill of the Andromedan Collective. Their military technology appears to be several generations ahead of our current understanding. Dr. Foster smiled politely. We never lied about our capabilities. We simply answered the questions that were asked. No one inquired about our response protocols for crimes against our offspring. The truth was more complex than Dr. Foster indicated, and everyone in the chamber suspected it. Humanity had maintained extensive hidden military programs throughout their expansion into galactic society. The ships that had destroyed the trafficking network were not part of any fleet that other species had observed. The weapons they used operated on principles that violated several established laws of physics. Ambassador Trill called for order as dozens of representatives began speaking simultaneously. The chamber was filled with nervous energy as species that had considered themselves galactic powers realized they might be completely outmatched by their newest neighbors. The immediate question before this council, Trill announced, is how to prevent similar incidents in the future. The human response, while arguably justified, has destabilized criminal networks across 17 sectors. We are receiving reports of power struggles, territorial disputes, and refugee movements that could affect legitimate commerce. What Trill did not mention was the other reports flooding into council intelligence networks. Species after species was discovering that the hegemony had been taking their children as well. The trafficking network that humanity had exposed included victims from over 30 different worlds. The humans had not just rescued their own offspring, they had accidentally triggered a galaxy-wide investigation into organized child trafficking. The Centauri Federation has discovered 17 of our young ones in facilities that were exposed during the human investigation, reported Ambassador Venn. They had been missing for over 2 standard years. We had assumed they died in transportation accidents. Similar reports came from dozens of other species. The hegemony's trafficking network had been far more extensive than anyone realized. Children from across the galaxy had been disappearing for decades, sold to buyers who valued them for their specific biological or psychological characteristics. This council owes humanity a debt of gratitude, declared Representative Moss of the Rigelian Empire. Their investigation has revealed crimes against our species that we never suspected. The hegemony has been systematically stealing our future generations. The debate continued for 18 hours as species after species discovered the scope of the trafficking network. What had started as a discussion about human military actions became a galaxy-wide reckoning with organized crime that had operated under everyone's notice. The final resolution was unprecedented in Council history. Galactic Directive 2847 Alpha was expanded into the most comprehensive child protection law ever created. Any species that harmed, kidnapped, or threatened the offspring of any council member would face immediate exclusion from the galactic community, loss of all trade privileges, and potential military action. More significantly, humanity volunteered to serve as enforcement for the new directive. Their demonstrated capabilities and obvious commitment to protecting children made them the logical choice for the role. The council voted unanimously to accept the offer. Representative Koss made one final objection. You are giving humans the authority to act as galactic police force. They have already demonstrated that they do not respect traditional legal boundaries. This will create more problems than it solves. Dr. Foster stood to address the chamber for the final time. Her words would be quoted in legal documents for centuries to come. We understand the concerns about human enforcement methods. Let me be clear about our position. We will use whatever force is necessary to protect any child of any species. We will not negotiate with kidnappers. We will not accept excuses from governments that allow trafficking. We will not be deterred by diplomatic protests or legal challenges. She paused to let her words settle across the chamber. However, we will also provide protection, resources, and support to any species that genuinely commits to protecting their young. We are not interested in conquest or control. We are interested in making sure that what happened to our children never happens to anyone else's children. The vote was held that evening. The expanded Child Protection Directive passed with only 3 dissenting votes, all from species with known connections to criminal organizations. Humanity was formally authorized to serve as enforcement, with council backing and unlimited jurisdictional authority. Within 6 months, child trafficking in council space had dropped to nearly 0. The few criminal organizations that attempted to continue operations discovered that humanity's intelligence networks were far more extensive than anyone had imagined. Ships disappeared without trace. Criminal bases were destroyed without warning. Trafficking operations were exposed and eliminated before they could complete their first transactions. The hegemony's surviving leadership petitioned for readmission to the council 2 years later. Their application included formal apologies to the families of every victim, reparations that bankrupted their government, and a complete restructuring of their society to prevent future incidents. Humanity's response was delivered by Dr. Foster, in her characteristic gentle tone. We appreciate the hegemony's efforts to address their past crimes. However, readmission to this council requires more than apologies and payments. It requires trust. Perhaps in another generation or 2, when you have proven that your species can be trusted around anyone's children, we can reconsider this request. The galaxy learned several important lessons from what became known as the New Dawn incident. First, there were lines that should never be crossed, regardless of potential profits or strategic advantages. Second, humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or military capability, but their absolute unwillingness to abandon their own. Most importantly, the galaxy learned that some warnings should always be heeded. Ambassador Trill's original directive had not been a diplomatic courtesy or a cultural preference. It had been a survival guide for any species that wanted to coexist peacefully with humanity. 10 years later, as Dr. Foster reviewed the annual reports on child welfare across the galaxy, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The statistics told a story of unprecedented success. Child trafficking had become virtually extinct in council space. Educational opportunities for young beings had expanded dramatically. Medical care for juveniles had improved across dozens of worlds. The price of this success had been the complete destruction of criminal organizations that had operated for centuries. But as Dr. Foster had told the Council years earlier, humanity was willing to use whatever force was necessary to protect children. The galaxy was a safer place for its youngest citizens, and everyone understood that humanity would keep it that way.